All right. I believe that we are live, and I believe you can hear me. Hi, everybody. Okay, good. Looks like we are up and running and live from Denver. It is Sunday afternoon. Let me just check here. Yep. Okay, good. Looks like everything's fine. I'm a little creaky, a little, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Sorry for the creaky start. Yes, good. I am live and audible. All right. So, welcome to Critical Conversations on a Sunday. Everything is a little askew. The last 2 weeks, the last week and a half has been a little whack in my life, schedule-wise, work-wise, everything-wise, sick-wise. I got really sick, is what happened. And so this, as everybody's kind of coming on board, and we've just kind of started the show here. I'm kind of happy that we're doing this over the weekend because Friday's not as accessible for as many people, and this topic is of broad interest to people. But it just, my whole world has been really off kilter, and I'm a schedule-oriented person. I'm a time-oriented person. I was sort of forced into that way of thinking and habit of really living by the clock. Years and years and years ago when I was a course room supervisor, and really my life down to the second, and I prided myself on that. And so it's been a slow process, sort of like realizing that the rest of my life doesn't have to be such a Swiss, precisely engineered machine of efficiency. Okay, good. So I can see the comments coming up here now that we've gone live. And and welcome critics to the show. I am so glad that y'all are here joining me today. And I'm glad that I'm back in working order enough to be able to do this show. I have really missed talking to you guys. It doesn't seem like that long to y'all, and I'm sure it's not that big of a deal in the big wide world, of course. But for me, my whole world revolves around my production. And so when I am not producing content for you guys and not basically doing my job, it really does bother me a lot. And so you guys have been nothing but supportive and helpful and telling me to just chill the hell out, calm down. It's all good. Y'all aren't going anywhere. But I do have my personal insecurities about all of that. And I also, of course, just really love interacting and talking with you guys and doing these shows. So, well, thank you, Keith. Okay, so thank you. All right, so these are great comments coming in from you guys, so really appreciate it. And hello, all the way from Copenhagen, from LA, from wow. Damn, Croatia. It's just awesome. I love the international aspect of my show. So anyway, welcome everybody. So basically just to let everybody know what happened real quick, and then we'll get to the meat of this show. My wife and I went to a wedding in Kansas last week and came back with what I'm calling the Kansas flu, because I don't know it. We tested negative for COVID. Thank goodness. And so the last thing, hey, Alberta, Canada, and Netherlands. So the last thing I want is COVID. I do not want anything to do with contracting COVID in any way. I am still concerned about, some of the longer term effects of it. And I don't take those unseriously. So the flu was bad enough, and I'm somebody who doesn't get sick. I'm that guy who never gets sick. I always care for other people who are sick, or I'm always dealing with stuff or whatever, but I don't get sick. And so when I went down this time, Mel was really surprised. She was such a champ. Thank you, Dorte. She was such a champ helping me through this because we were both knocked out pretty bad, but she actually had a little bit less than I did. She, though, is not joining me today because she had a little bit of a recurrence. And so today she is completely chilling on the couch. In fact, she's over in the living room right now, calming down and just taking it easy today because she had a little bit of a thing kind of come back. So hopefully that just chills today. I had to force myself. This on Thursday, my fever broke. On Friday, I thought things were going to be wonderful and I was going to get right back into it. And I went too far too fast, and I had the show all scheduled, and then at the last minute had to pull the plug. Really hated doing that. I cannot tell you guys how much I hate doing that. So I really felt it was a disservice to you guys, and I am very happy that I was able to bounce back and get this going. Yeah, I was just, here's the thing, hey, hun, about this, and I'll probably end up doing a whole show about this. I was gonna do my podcast this week, getting into the history of man stuff, and I think and that's still gonna happen, but I think I'm gonna do some talk about the recovery, because there were some things I really hit on as far as pushing myself too far and being OT and how you really, okay, here, let me put it this way. A lot of people ask, how is it and why is it that a lot of OT Scientologists get cancer and die? It seems that there's a higher incidence of that amongst Scientologists than in the general population. And I'm going to tell you the answer that has dawned on me now is because they just ignore their body. They ignore their warning signs and red flags coming from their body. And they are indoctrinated in Scientology. They are taught very carefully over and over and over again to ignore and not pay attention to and relegate as of completely secondary importance your body. And so when your body is screaming at you that it needs rest, that it needs food, that it needs water, that it needs help, that there's something wrong, that you're having pains and aches and things, just ignore it. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. Yeah, as a Scientologist, you are taught, ignore it. It is not important. It is not necessary that you deal with the body. You, as the Thetan, are more powerful than you will ever know, and you're the one who's in the driver's seat. You're at cause. And so screw your body. Screw what your body says. It doesn't matter. And that's how they get cancer, and that's how they get every other disease, right? Is because they just ignore it. And it just never really came home to me as hard as it did this last week, how destructive and damaging that attitude is, and how much work it took for me to overcome those, that indoctrination, that desire to just, fuck it, screw it. Doesn't matter. My body is not the important thing. I am, Xenu, that's right. I had a little bit too much Xenu in my life this week. Anyway, so no, I did not get accused of pulling things in, but boy, you just ignore things for too long and it's not a good thing. I was drinking and have been drinking, by the way, an awful lot of orange juice, but I am back to my red and white today. Okay. So, you'd think, Nick, you would definitely think that they would, but they don't. Okay, they do not at all. Anyway, so good to see everybody here in the comment section. Welcome back, all my critics. So many plans, so many good things, so much good stuff happening that I just want to drive forward. And there's another thing that I've been dealing with, accepting, coming to terms with, and really getting my wits around and accepting. And I know this sounds so dumb to some of you guys, but for me, this is really big stuff. You're getting older. You're not 26 anymore, Chris, and you stop. And I know this is not just me, but you have to really get over. You just don't have the producing power that you had when you were 26 years old, and my brain still feels that same young age, but my body's like, no, man, no, you don't get to sit for 8, 10, 12 hours at a stretch, or even 6 or 5 anymore, and just pound out the production. It just doesn't. My body's like, no, I don't think so, man. I don't think that's what we're going to do today. But we are going to do this show. Now, yes, Keith, I am definitely kind of interested in that new Star Trek show, actually. It's the first thing that's interested me in Star Trek in years, so we'll see We'll see if it's any good. Now, this is a live show, and we're going to be discussing this new lawsuit that happened this week. On Thursday, a new lawsuit was filed in Florida. In fact, in the exact same federal court district that the Luis Garcia fraud case was filed in. To the point that this court case actually ended up being assigned a judge in the same courtroom, apparently, according to Tony's reporting on this. And both Tony and I think, are sort of looking at this lawsuit a little bit like, okay, well, this is interesting. Kind of very, very similar in a lot of ways to the lawsuit that the Headleys filed in California, different venue, back in the early 2000s, in the mid 2000s. In terms of the violations, the federal statutes that are being cited, have to do with human trafficking, and we'll go over some of that. But this is different in that they are asserting that this was happening to them as minors as well as adults. And the list of grievances and accusations and the specifics of Gawain Baxter, Laura Baxter, and Valeska Paris. These are the three people who are bringing the suit. Gawain and Laura Baxter, Valeska Paris are the plaintiffs. David Miscavige, the Church of Scientology International, the Religious Technology Center, IAS Administrations Incorporated, the Church of Scientology Flag Service Organization, and the Church of Scientology Flagship Service Organization are the named defendants. Okay, so going right to the top as far as what this is. And it's a civil action. It's a complaint and demand for a jury trial. Now, I've asked one of my lawyer friends to call in during the show here, and he might do so we can talk about certain aspects of this case from his perspective as a federally trained lawyer. I just want to go over a couple things to sort of lay out what this case is and what they are doing. Let me just catch up real fast on some of the comments. Yeah, I can't speak yet as to statute of limitations, but the charges, Tony clarified yesterday on his blog that the charges being brought here are not, you trafficked us as minors and therefore we're suing you as adults. It's not child specific, apparently. It's not child trafficking that they are claiming that they're bringing against here. It's just trafficking in general. And I can't speak totally to the differences with that, but I can say that it's not wholly reliant on like statutes of limitations and the fact that they were minors. Okay. All right, good. Let me get to this. Now, the thing that I was initially, when I started looking through the filing, and this is an 86-page document, and so I can't say I've read every single thing here, and even if I had, I'm not a lawyer. And as you guys know, and you've seen when I've talked to Phil Lord a couple weeks ago, and we've had numerous instances of Cyprian Ivanov on my show as a lawyer, and you've seen me in my frustration about the law and about, you know, the runarounds and the difficulties of bringing a suit against a group for abusive practices that you once agreed to, or seemed to agree to, or signed contracts saying you agreed to. You know, this is really frustrating stuff because, you know, we all know the abuses, the physical abuses, the psychological abuses that can happen in the Church of Scientology, especially almost exclusively these legal cases deal with the kind of abuses that happen in the C organization, which is your core, you know, the Vatican of Scientology. I keep saying that, and I think it's a good analogy, but I don't know. You tell me. But it's the core group, and the Sea Org is the most abusive. It is the most. It's just bad. It's a bad place to be. And I, of course, was in the Sea Org for 17 years. and, was abused a lot. And I didn't go into the Sea Org knowing that that was going to happen to me. And I didn't go into the Sea Org accepting that and saying, yes, please abuse me. But when you're in that environment and with the peer pressure and the rules and the stress and the group agreement and the nuttiness that can happen and the pressures of the moment, which is often how these things happen, they are not well thought through, orchestrated campaigns. Generally, most of the abuse that goes on in the Sea Org is in the moment kind of stuff, based upon and on a foundation of the abusive DNA of Scientology, right? All the justice system, the ethics system, the authoritarian controls, all encourage these abusive sort of responses to disciplinary actions or situations where people are, pushing back against Scientology's constrictive, restrictive, authoritarian rules, and they get treated really, really badly, right? So it's sort of in Scientology and the Sea Org's DNA to be this way. And I was kind of interested while going through the document to see that they brought up coercive control as a point in the background. And but they don't really, in the filing, go into the specifics of what coercive control is and what it's all about. And hopefully they will have an opportunity during the actual trial or evidence phase of all of this to bring more about that. There is a point in the thing that I thought you guys might find interesting, and we could go over about what they do say in the lawsuit about the psychology of Scientology, which I thought you might find interesting. So I did want to go over it a little bit. See, I think they've got, with the fact that these were kids raised in the Sea Org or abused in the Sea Org as children and then into adults, I think they do have a little bit of a thing there. But I'm not a lawyer, right? Just responding to some comments here from, I think, Keith or Dorte. Yes. Okay. But let me go over this real fast, and then I will pick up the call that's in the queue. I see you in there. Okay. Let me just read a little bit of this here because I thought you might find this interesting. This is under Section 3, Psychological Theory. Scientology rests almost entirely upon the writings of L. Ron Hubbard, a science fiction author who wrote Dianetics, Modern Science, Mental Health in 1950, which was for a time a popular volume in the self-help human potential genre. The basic theory of Dianetics is that the human mind can be separated into two spheres, an emotionally reactive mind and an unemotional analytical mind. Dianetics teaches that the analytic mind is a computer incapable of error. Human misjudgments, on the other hand, which create social problems and much individual suffering, are attributed to the emotionally reactive mind, which is made up of patterns imprinted on the nervous system in moments of pain or stress. That's a pretty good little summary of that. That's why I wanted to share it with you guys. I thought, oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. I kind of like that. These imprinted patterns may be triggered by stimuli associated by the emotional mind with the original imprinting, which may in turn produce unconscious or conditioned behavior, which is harmful or irrational. So basically, the psychological theory being that it is a form of conditioning that is laid in on you by traumatic episodes that occur to you. And this psychological theory, which is unquestioningly accepted and applied in Scientology, is not considered to be limited to a description of the mind, but it to also offer a basis for a practical science, which purportedly can cure many individual and societal problems. And this is where we have to kind of go, yeah, purportedly, because we all know that the last thing that any of this theory actually results in is cures. No one's really cured of anything permanent or long-term in Scientology as a result of Scientology auditing. the number of validated, nailed cures. Actual, it's gone, it's never coming back, leukemia, bad eyesight, cancer, etc. Big goose egg, right? All we have are a few anecdotes. I had headaches, I had migraines, I had this, I had that. And after I had some Dianetics, I no longer suffered from that. Oh, yeah? Nice story. Let's get some evidence. Let's get some proof. Let's get some medical testing. Let's see the before and afters. Does not exist. And in 1951, by the way, a fairly extensive study, the only real scientific third-party objective study of Dianetics, was done using rigorous testing and, well, semi-rigorous testing, I guess you could say. And they had goose eggs. They had nothing, right? They were like, yeah, this doesn't show up anything normal, useful, helpful at all with Dianetics promises versus results, right? There were no results to speak of that indicated Dianetics therapy was at all helping people beyond, past their physical ailments or real long-term mental issues. So basically, we all know it's all so much hype. Now, what they get into, though, in talking about coercive control. Okay, here we go. This concept is extremely broad, permits Scientology to consider every behavior, feeling, or thought that an individual may have to have been a result of some error in the reactive mind that can be erased. That's the theory, right? The idea is that anything wrong with you, we can fix it. We can erase it. And once it's gone, you'll be great. This theory is used by Scientology, just reading from the lawsuit here again. This theory is used by Scientology to justify the application of highly abusive, destructive methods that enable it to manipulate, break down, and subsequently gain nearly complete coercive control over its subjects, resulting in long-term emotional, psychological, and even physical injuries. This theory is also used to justify odious forms of child abuse and the covering up of such abuses, including those inflicted upon the plaintiffs alleged herein. Okay? So then they speak in this next section, specifically Section 5, under coercive control. And of course, I think we all know why I'm focusing on this part, right? Because I just did a whole degree in coercive control. Auditing. Defendants employ a manipulative process referred to as auditing. I love that description because it's a perfect description of auditing. Auditing is a manipulative process. It's great. I just, you don't see it put that way sometimes. Sometimes the simplicity of things. Which enables them to attain and exert control over members, including plaintiffs. Auditing is conducted by defendant, operations of Scientology centers around the world. All members, including children, are required to submit to auditing on a regular basis. The auditing process is conducted by an auditor who's trained to lead the subject through interrogation sessions that can last hours. All very true. Okay, so I wanted to kind of throw some of those things out there first. Oh, hey, Marco. Welcome in the comments. Yeah, nice to see you. Okay. Okay. Oh, Henny, I am reading from the lawsuit. Okay, and and as far as this question, what's the end game for the lawsuit? To get justice for the victims and to financially compensate them for their years of the abusive treatment they had to receive by Scientology, and thereby open the door to more lawsuits on the same grounds, right? If this is successfully prosecuted against Scientology, then, well, I shouldn't use the word prosecuted, but if it's successfully executed, I guess I could say, then this would open the door to other victims of Scientology being able to step up and who have experienced similar, worse, or, kind of abuses. Okay. Roberts, you're going to have to go back to the beginning. I laid all that out. So, yeah, watch from the get-go. Okay, so we have a call, and because this is such an interesting topic, I want to take this. Hello, is this?
Hello?
Hi, Cyprian.
Yeah, Ciprian Ivanov. Yes, the lawyer that Chris had prior mentioned.
Yes. Hi, Cyprian. Welcome to the show.
Well, a few comments.
Yes, please.
One, the comparison between the Miscavige and the Pope is rather incorrect.
Okay.
There's a number of institutional checks against papal decision-making that do not exist in Scientology. Scientology tries to make that comparison because it's trying to take the mantle of a much more cautious organization, and people go along with it because they don't know the inner workings of Scientology bureaucracy the way that people are more familiar with the College of Cardinals or various bishops' councils in the Catholic Church.
Interesting, because I'll comment that I will misuse that then, and I'll stop making that comparison then. But I'll say that I make that comparison for the reverse reason. I understand the Scientology bureaucracy, and maybe I don't understand the Catholic bureaucracy as well as I should. So fair enough, and thanks for clarifying that for me.
And that is tangential to one of the things that I really liked about this complaint that was drafted. It doesn't take Scientology worded explanations for their own description of facts. Because when you describe the Sea Org as an unincorporated membership trust, or was it the IAS? Either way, that's relying on Scientology wording that was designed to look legitimate, not the reality.
Good.
And people trying to get justice regarding Scientology should not be taking their heavily manipulated wording when they're trying to make their own arguments.
Very good point. Very good point.
This case, thankfully, had people put the facts of what took place and the organizations that existed in real words, not Scientology's words.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not realize until fairly recently myself just how important that is. And I still make mistakes as a former Scientologist, thinking in the way that I think because of the way that, you're taught stuff, that wording is the wording, right? And so it is crafty and important stuff. And I'm glad you're pointing that out.
For people who are not familiar, what Chris is referring to is the initial complaint. And that can set forth a cause of action, a factual theory for how it relates, and should also involve a legal theory, but that does not absolutely need to be articulated. It just helps. And basically what is being alleged is that the children who were in the cadet org were subject to slavery or peonage, or basically the Sea Org was violating a federal law against slavery or peonage.
And now, how do they define that? How do they define legally? I mean, in terms of looking at this from your point of view, how do you think about or talk about slavery or peonage versus children working in on a volunteer basis somehow? Like how would the Sea Org present what they're doing with these kids versus slavery?
That's part of the problem. It is a deeply unclear concept. So trying to prove that took place is going to be an uphill battle, because just all the definitions, for example, 18 U.S.C. 1589, forced labor, was there threats of physical restraint? Well, when you consider the way that Scientology hires private investigators to get people back, maybe you could say that, or maybe not. it's kind of hard to determine that.
So if I were to, or others who were in the Sea Org were to testify to being locked up or seeing others locked up in rooms, for OW write-ups or for punishment or for various things, type 3 watches, that kind of thing, that would or wouldn't bolster that case?
I mean, the question is, what is the purpose of the watch? If it's to prevent a person from committing suicide, that would be pretty justifiable in most situations.
Right. Versus,
if the purpose is to stop a person from escaping and going to the authorities, that is very, very different.
Right. Right. And proving that, again, is the difficult part as well, because was it said? Was it inferred? How do you know? This is where things get difficult.
However, the fact that this was happening to children strengthens the argument that it was conducted against the will of the individual. Whereas when you're dealing with adults, it's presumed that they have read the documents. It's presumed that they know the questions to ask. So it's an uphill battle to show how their will was overcome. When you're dealing with little children, in the case of one of them who was 6 years old, you're dealing with a very different set of circumstances.
Right.
And when you deal with the dark divide, this is very strong evidence that he did not know what he was getting into. He could not know.
Right.
And that Scientology was effectively acting in the role of a parent, and what they were doing was grossly abusive and maltreatment.
Got it. So it being the case that the 3 plaintiffs in this case are saying that they were abused as minors as well as adults, does this case present differently than the Headley case, even though the charges, I believe, are basically the same?
The charges are not the same.
They're not the same. Okay.
No.
I thought the human trafficking...
The facts have some comparisons, such as the unsafe working conditions.
So the TVPRA points are not they're not the same ones?
No.
Okay, got it. And TVPRA, for the audience, by the way, there are 3 or 4 counts being brought against Scientology as the basis of the lawsuit, the actual laws that are being counted here. Forced labor and attempted forced labor in violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act. That's the TVPRA, is the Traffic Victims Protection Reauthorization Act. And there is a count of forced labor and attempted forced labor. There is count 2, conspiracy to obtain forced labor. Count 3 is trafficking and attempted trafficking with respect to forced labor. And count 4 is conspiracy to traffic with respect to forced labor. So none of those charges are specifically child labor charges. Is that right?
Correct. But the factual pattern to support those claims really does benefit from the fact that they were children at the time.
Right. And that's so am I right in thinking or hoping that might be a key difference here between what the Headleys ran into versus what these guys might be presented with?
I think that makes their case a lot stronger than the Headleys.
Great. Okay, good. What else do you see here in terms of pros and cons from your perspective, just on first blush? And by the way, could you actually, before you answer that, could you clarify for the audience, like you did for me, this is an initial filing. This is like, hey, court, here we are, and we have these charges, and we want the Scientology to respond to this, and we want a case. That this is an initial filing, right?
Yes. They can, of course, amend it at least once, and with leave of court, they may amend it multiple times. So if there is a defect in this filing, they can correct it.
Great. Okay, so they can definitely bolster their case depending on how Scientology responds to it?
or based on what they think through more in the meantime.
Got it. Okay, good. Like, for example, maybe bolstering up some of their coercive control psychology points.
I mean, that does not have to be in the complaint, but it helps.
Yeah, I would think it would.
But what I really am worried by is the fact that it's relying heavily on a very hard to prove statute. There are several things that Scientology has done very wrong to these people. But when it all hinges on one statute that is hard to prove, that is going to be a very difficult fight.
Okay, got it.
But if they had included a bunch of other things that Scientology had done wrong and that were illegal, then the odds would be much stronger in their favor.
Can they amend this to add other counts of other points of the TVPRA or other federal statutes that they believe are violated?
Yes. They can even add in some state laws insofar as they are kind of a sideline. Okay. Like Florida state laws, or like how would that work? Like Florida state laws, yes.
Okay.
There's the interest in judicial economy that rather than split it between two courts, we might as well just handle it in one.
Right. That makes sense. And what is your opinion, just on first blush here, about what they should do with that? Do you think they should? Because you seem to indicate that there were other charges that they could have brought that would be much easier to prove than these TVPRA points.
Unfortunately, I don't know enough to really pinpoint specific ones.
Sure, just what you were thinking when you said that.
Some variety of fraud would be relevant.
Oh, really?
And you can even allege things that are contradictory. That if you prove one, it disproves another. The point is, you just have to list what you think they might have done wrong, and even if the claims are contradictory, the point is what the claims are, not do they all have to make sense at the same time.
Interesting. Okay. Fair enough. And what happens now? Oh, actually, back up one second. This point keeps coming up of statute of limitations. How would that concept apply to this case?
As I haven't taken a close look at this statute, but I'm not really seeing much that would indicate a serious statute of limitations. And even if there was, the fact that these people were children would toll it.
Would toll it?
It would. The statute of limitations would be paused while these people were children.
Oh, I see.
So if a crime occurs against a child, and there's a statute of limitation of, say, 10 years, then it would be 10 years after the person has reached adulthood.
Interesting. So they have 10 years basically to kind of find out and then bring a case.
Right.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Well, do you know in this case with these statutes or with these laws that they're citing or bringing the complaint based on, would a statute of limitations apply here? Do you know?
I don't see one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sort of struggling to see how there is one, but I wanted to, but I'm often surprised by legal stuff, so.
Well, there are some crimes that do not have statutes of limitation, such as murder.
Right.
And I would guess that slavery is another one.
I would think, you'd think certain things. Okay, fair enough. Good. So where we stand right now the ink is still drying on this, basically. I mean, it was just filed Thursday. So procedurally now, and given the fact that this is going to roll out in the same courtroom that Luis Garcia's did, so we already kind of know the framework of where this thing is going, that way, what's next? What happens next here?
Well, we would have to wait for Scientology to get served, and hopefully we can verify that they've been served properly, so they don't play the same "we weren't really served" games that you saw in another case.
Right. Do you think that even if they are served properly, they'll still play those games?
Yes.
Of course they will. Yeah, I thought so too. But please continue.
Then there's probably, and there may be a response of, yes, we have received this. Here are our responses that we have received it. The judge is going to give the plaintiffs a chance to amend their complaint to include anything they wish to add or subtract or whatnot. And that's going to happen. I strongly suggest that the plaintiffs revise their complaint to include a heck of a lot more claims and more specific demands for restitution. Because the thing, whatever the court decides, is a recipe for getting lowballed.
Oh, okay. Because you're referring here to the wording that they used in the complaint, where they say they're entitled to recover damages in an amount to be proven at trial. Including compensatory and punitive damages, attorney's fees, costs, and other relief that the court may deem proper. You're referring to that wording?
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe put in some like dollar figures or something?
Yes. I was initially kind of concerned until I realized that this was under federal subject jurisdiction. That happens under diversity of citizenship jurisdiction. There has to be at least $75,000 and 1 penny or so for the court to hear it.
Wow.
I mean, I haven't checked the federal rules of civil procedure in the past couple of years regarding that, but there are some laws regarding when the court will take a case based on diversity of citizenship jurisdiction.
Oh, that's interesting. Of course. But it's this kind of stuff that I need you, and I'm so glad I'm talking to you for, because this is the kind of stuff we lay people don't think about or even know about. You know.
I mean, no comment there. I mean, it's stuff that I kind of grew up with, but
yeah. Well, I could have delved into the doctrine of latches and why I don't think that's applicable here, but all right. Well, fair enough. Did you have any other comments or things that you thought people new to this, or as we're just kind of, revving up into this, any other points or things that you thought we might want to highlight? You and I have had hours and hours of discussions on Scientology litigation. And I really would like to see something succeed, but I also know, to be leery of investing too many emotional eggs into this basket, because, the chances of failure are what they are. And it seems like against Scientology, those chances are, can be rather high. What are you thinking?
Scientology will, of course, try to fight every little thing they can.
Of course.
But the benefit of the legal system is that there are explicit rules. One of the downsides of this filing is that they did not include reference to a lot of law. It was just, here's the statute, here are the facts in general regarding Scientology, and here are the facts in specific about the plaintiffs. That doesn't tell you that much as to whether this is how this falls under the interpretation of the laws, or what the general laws regarding this stuff are.
Right. Because the vast majority of the filing of the 86 pages is the details of the abuse that they suffered and the facts specific to the plaintiffs. The first 57 pages of this are that. So there's a lot of information on what they went through, but not a lot of relating that to the legal, the laws and statutes that are actually being violated. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So they did. So at least they put the data in. Mm-hmm.
They put some core facts in, which means that it will survive quickball motion. Sorry. There has to be some basic fact alleged in order for a motion to survive, motion to summarily be dismissed.
Oh, sure.
So it can survive that.
Okay.
The problem is it doesn't allege enough laws to really tell you, is this actually illegal conduct, or is this only vaguely relating to the same terms that are used in the statute?
Right.
And you need references to statutes or case law to do that.
Okay. So if they had, so this would be a much stronger initial filing had they taken the time to take each thing. Basically what we're saying is take each thing that went down or happened to these people over these years and show this happened and here's the law this violates, or here's why this is a problem according to the statute or according to this case precedent.
Yes.
Got it. And so they could beef that up extraordinarily more and really steal up this complaint that they're filing.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see any other points of advice you might give that might steal this up? I think that's a great one, and I agree with you because in reading through it, I kind of wondered the same things myself, but I don't have those legal chops you do. So, any other similar points of correction that might make this better?
This is my personal writing style, but I would have included a lot more citations in the fact section.
Okay.
Because thus far, basically what is being included there is either personal testimony or hearsay. And yes, you can revise that or provide supporting evidence further along, but that just seems a little tedious and a bit of a waste of time when you could have just included citations in the initial filings.
Right.
But that's a stylistic point on my view.
On your part.
It's not an actual legal requirement.
Okay, fair enough. And somebody asks here, Cardboard Casket asks, could they use case law from a similar organization with the same accusations?
Absolutely. It is quite common for lawyers to take a look at similar lawsuits to find similar authorities or ways of articulating things. That's
right.
One reason why when looking to see how some Scientology lawsuits could proceed, I wanted to take a look at some of the earlier Scientology lawsuits, like, I can't remember that guy, but this was back in the early 90s who ended up suing.
Wallersheim.
It was a very, Wallersheim.
Yeah.
That was a very tangled case.
Yeah.
But if you can see how it was articulated, not just what the claims were, but how it was articulated, you can go a lot further than if it was just, they sued and won, and we're going to sue and maybe we'll win.
Yes.
No, you want to see specific authorities, specific types of argumentation, specific ways of trying to persuade people.
Right. I think so. So you're basically saying they're suggesting that they take a page from Wallersheim's lawyers as to how they put their case together and apply that to this case now.
That might be applicable.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying that it is. It might be, because we're still dealing with very different situations. The plaintiffs here were children. So
yes.
The issues that have to do with overcoming a child's ability to reason through and understand a situation are going to be fundamentally different than with someone who joined Scientology as an adult.
Exactly. I have two questions on that real fast. One, there's a question here about the contract law, right? Because that's the first thing everybody's wary about now because of how Scientology has played contract law into this into the religious arena, with their contracts. Will these children, or they, when they were children, or and then growing up into adults, does this help sidestep that whole contract problem and arbitration problem that we've run into so often in recent years?
Not totally, but it does a huge amount.
Okay. So that might be the sort of linchpin that they're basing their thing on here, their strategy on, is, hey, these were kids. Come on.
Well, when you deal with a bunch of the limiting factors in when a contract is considered void, because the will of the other person has been overcome, that is childhood is considered one of those major factors.
Right.
Other things like the generally coercive environment of the Sea Org would also be strong arguments, but I haven't seen anyone effectively make those.
And that's what I was hoping I was going to see in this writing. When I saw coercive control, it's like, finally, somebody's going to make that argument. And they didn't really, and I hope they do. What's that?
Because this is one way, because the fact pattern here is ideal for overcoming those crazy Sea Org contracts. Yes. Because of course a kid who's been in that kind of isolated environment is not going to understand those.
Exactly.
And even if they did, they wouldn't have a real choice because of the pressure that Scientology imposes on children.
Exactly. And if that pattern could be shown, because I'm thinking there's a real opening here to show how, as children, you are in this coercive environment where it's as close to this concept of brainwashing as we're going to get, so that kind of situation, right? And so these kids growing up into adults in that environment are maintaining that mindset of control. And so therefore, even as adults, you could make the argument, because they were kids brought up in this thing, that those contracts are null and void all the way up the line. Does that logic hold?
No.
It does not. As adults, that's it. Well, sorry, you're an adult. We don't care.
It's not automatic.
Okay.
It's not automatic. You have to look at the specific facts.
No,
generally,
I'm saying, could they make the argument, if they're successful at the argument of, hey, as kids we were coercively controlled into this, and therefore let us now argue that carried forward into the adult phase of our lives with this too?
I don't think that would automatically happen. You would have to allege more facts.
Do you think that they could? What's that?
Do I think there is a good case for that? Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Do I think it's automatic? No.
I don't mean automatic, and I don't know where that idea is coming from. I didn't mean to say automatic. I meant, could they argue this in the court as part of the case and make it?
They could argue the coercive environment as a child would go a long way to creating the special relationship that would mean that their will would have been more likely to have been overcome illegitimately.
Right.
Even when they were an adult.
That's an argument I would love for them to make.
A parent or a pastor or a doctor trying to pressure a person into a contract in unusual circumstances is considered much more suspect than otherwise.
Okay.
So when you consider the confluence of factors with regards to Scientology, oh yeah, that would definitely be a really persuasive factor. Oh, you've been raised by Scientology, and now Scientology is demanding that you sign this contract.
Right. See, because I'm thinking that might be the most direct and powerful way of sidestepping the entire arbitration contract issue here is, hey, this was what you think all this just disappears when you turn 18? No, all that mind control and all that psychological coercion stays with you, and exactly what you just said, right?
And I think that's a very persuasive argument that has been dealt with in some other cases. Sadly, I did not see that made in a number of Scientology cases.
Exactly.
And this is an opportunity
They do it now.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, good. I just want to make sure we were on the same page on that. Thanks for staying with me on that one. Yeah, and the kids thing, as I'm seeing in the comments and stuff here too. You know, it's never as cut and dry and black and white as you think it is when it comes to the legal stuff. It just blows me away. But it makes sense at the same time because
absolutely,
you know, because the law has to fit everybody, all circumstances.
Yeah, the law is a blunt instrument, and it causes a lot of trauma when it hits. So it tends to be used rather sparingly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we have the possibility here of them being able to make that argument, but there isn't really any indication in this filing that that's on their mind yet.
Correct.
Okay.
I would very, very strongly urge that they do that. I considered calling up one of the guys, one of the lawyers who signed off on it, to say, hey, please make this argument. Yeah. But this is out of my jurisdiction here.
Of course. No, your advice on this is all from the sideline, and we understand that. Okay, fair enough. Well, that's a powerful point, and I hope that gets put into the mix on this. Do you have any other points on this besides beefing it up and that particular contract arbitration point that could be run around? Do you think there's other case law or other organizations or situations that could be brought in here that occur to you that might help bolster this case? Any LDS cases or Mormon cases or Jehovah's Witness cases or anything like that you're aware of, or anything like, similar?
No, okay. But there is a very famous case that I wish I could remember right now. I kept on bugging you about it a while ago, which sets forth many of the common elements that go into determining if a person's will has been illegitimately overcome.
Yes.
And it's a California case. Remember that there are laws about when to invalidate a contract because of undue pressure.
Right, undue influence, yes. That's right. So do you think that those arguments might also help bolster this case then?
They would be inherently required in this case. Odrici v. Bloomington School District. Bloomfield School District.
That's right. Yeah, we talked about that. I remember that. That's right.
It is. I think it was. It deals with factors that you absolutely have to discuss when it comes to the ostensibly voluntary nature of Scientology.
Okay.
You have to point out that people are here not because of their will, but because of a lot of illegitimate pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and especially if they were brought in as kids and stayed. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, any other points you see here?
Those are the major ones.
Good. Those are pretty major.
The real issue is what happens when they amend the complaint. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be more fleshed out, or is it going to be much of the same?
Right. And so far, according to the critiques that you and I have discussed in the past of the Haney case, the Headley case, the what was the other one? The Luis Garcia case was better, but it was sort of one of the first ones where they hit him with the contract law stuff. They all didn't really do the things you're suggesting here of really bolstering up and citations to other laws to really ironclad their complaint. Is that did I remember that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Garcia case was probably the strongest of the ones that I looked at.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, it failed to articulate what documents were being reviewed in the arbitration.
Right.
And as such, without looking at specifics, you can't determine if the arbitration is considered fair or not, just because they might not have looked at a bunch of irrelevant documents.
Right. And the other thing that I noticed a dearth of in this, I think I'm using that word right. There wasn't a whole lot of, in fact, I don't remember much of anything, quotes from Hubbard's works.
That would be valuable, but that can be brought in as evidence in a later document.
Okay. So it wouldn't necessarily make for a stronger complaint to be citing, here L. Ron Hubbard said this, and that's why these people did this.
It would be somewhat stronger, but you'd also have to prove that current Scientology practices are in keeping with what would seem to be the reasonable interpretation of Hubbard. You don't just have to prove that this is a matter of Scientology theory. You have to prove that it's also a matter of Scientology practice and policy.
Okay.
And you absolutely can do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessary to put that in the complaint itself.
Okay, got it. Good. Okay, stronger to bring in these other statutes and other laws and other case law.
Right.
Okay, good. Good to know. Very good to know. Great. Okay, well, I really, really appreciate you calling in today, Cyprian. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to make this happen, and I'm really glad we did, because you have given me a lot stronger foundation to talk about this stuff. So I really, really appreciate your time and attention on this.
Well, I would certainly be curious in seeing how this case develops.
Yeah, we'll definitely all be watching very closely, and I'm sure that as new developments come, I will alert you to them so we can talk about them.
Well, thank you very much, and good day to you and to all of you in the comments. And yes, children can enter into binding contracts. There are some specifics, like if it's for necessities or if it's working in certain fields.
There you go. Good. Perfect. Thanks, Cyprian. Talk to you soon, man. All right. Cool. That was a good call. All right. So, and that is basically all the things I wanted to cover too on this thing. Is I was really glad Cyprian called in there, but those points on the beefing up that business of coercive control and stuff, in the United Kingdom, in 2016, they put laws on the books for domestic violence protection, right? To protect women, men as well, from coercive control. And coercive control is a term that has been pretty used only in the field of domestic violence. But this is such a prime opportunity to bring it into the cult sphere. And I really, really hope that these lawyers and this case will move forward with that and push the boundaries of this. And the undue influence with contract laws is kind of how it shows up in the American legal system, but we need stronger protections. And coercive control is not an understood legal concept in the United States as an ongoing pattern of manipulation, of isolation, manipulation, and control. And that needs to get into our books. And until lawyers do that work, maybe case law, maybe these kind of cases can bring this stuff in, and expert testimony and study and studies of coercive control from these spheres can be brought in, and psychologists can be brought in to testify on this stuff, so that our legal system can kind of come out of the 1800s and its understanding of the criminal mind and how people work, and how people relate to each other. Because the American legal system, I will say on my own, is woefully inadequate when it comes to understanding these concepts and the long-term effects. The legal system's really good at, this incident happened, it violates this law, you're going to jail, right? But when it's an ongoing pattern of abuse and every single incident isn't really that much of a thing, but you put it all together and you're like, oh my God, that kind of thing needs to be recognized, and it's not really easily recognized in the American courts, at least as far as I can tell. I've never seen anything like this. So I'm hoping that this case and the understanding of our legal system can be pushed into the 21st century through these kind of actions. And that's the kind of thing. The reason I say that is because that's what's going to open the door so much easier to victims of all the destructive cults out there. Scientology is just one of the big boys on the block when it comes to the legal arena, but there are so many of these groups out there that get away with so much against children and adults, and they don't have the law backing the victims. They really, it's such an uphill battle. It is such a struggle to try to get some modicum of justice in this country, given the vast freedoms that we are afforded. We love our freedoms. We need our freedoms. But we don't need to be abused in order to maintain those freedoms. And that's where we lose the plot somehow. And that's my commentary on that, is we do lose the plot. I don't know exactly precisely where and exactly precisely how to fix that. But this is a suggestion is, well, let's look at what the UK is doing and see if that might help move this ball down the road. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Law of improbability is saying this lack of competent attorneys. I agree, but I don't know that that's true when it comes to coercive control. I'm not sure. Yeah, I totally hear you, law of improbability. I really do, and I think that is a thing. But I don't know. I'm not totally convinced yet. But thank you for commenting on that. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the show because we went for about an hour. But this just went so fast. I can't believe it. I feel like I blinked and the show was over. But let's go ahead and start wrapping up. As is tradition for our Critical Conversation show, if you guys don't watch on Fridays, usually we do this every week. I have this deck of critical thinking cards. And on them are printed logical fallacies and cognitive biases. And there's a bunch of them here. And I read from one each week to try to pass on some helpful education. And so drawing randomly here, I'll just cut the deck randomly. Special pleading. Okay, your fallacy. So this is a logical fallacy. It is called special pleading. Moving the goalposts to create exceptions when a claim is shown to be false. Okay, so you get busted, you get nailed, and you move the goalposts. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. Here's the example. Edward Johns claimed to be psychic, but when his abilities were tested under proper scientific conditions, they magically disappeared. Edward explained this, saying that one has to have faith in his abilities in order for them to work. Yeah. You just don't have faith, see? That's why. That's why I can't read your palm. Uh-huh. All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming around and watching the show. And thank you very much for all of your wonderful comments on this one. And of course, if I will throw out there, if you want to support the channel, I've got Venmo, PayPal, Patreon, bunch of stuff. And this is a fan-funded effort. Everything you guys bought this TV and this stuff. And you guys are the ones who are allowing me to do this and keep me going. So I want to thank you for that. I don't know that I expressed this well enough, but I really, really, really want to thank you guys for helping me to be able to live this dream of being able to help people out of cults and help people out of bad situations, bad relationships that they're stuck in out there. And I know that this show and that this work does that. And you guys help make that happen. So I want to thank you. And on that happy note, we're going to wrap up. So I will possibly be getting some more content out midweek. No promises. My nose needs to get better and all that. But we will see. Otherwise, I will definitely be seeing you guys next weekend. On Friday, we'll be doing Critical Conversations as usual and back to our regularly scheduled programming. All right. So on that happy note, bye-bye, everybody.